It was a dark, stormy night, and the rain lashed down relentlessly as I drove down the narrow, winding road. My headlights barely pierced the darkness, and the wind howled like a pack of ravenous wolves. I was on my way home from a work conference, desperate to get back to the safety and comfort of my own bed. As I approached a seemingly deserted gas station, I noticed a figure huddled by the side of the road, soaked to the bone and shivering in the rain. Against my better judgment, I pulled over and offered the stranger a ride. The man was gaunt and pale, with a shock of gray hair, and seemed oddly familiar. He thanked me, climbed into the passenger seat, and I continued on my way. As we drove, the stranger recounted a chilling tale, his voice barely audible above the cacophony of the storm. He spoke of the Harvest Man, a malevolent specter said to haunt these very roads, stealing the life essence from unfortunate travelers. I felt a shiver run down my spine as he described the terrifying figure in unsettling detail. We reached the stranger's destination, a dilapidated house at the edge of a desolate stretch of woods. He turned to me, his sunken eyes seeming to bore into my very soul. "Remember," he whispered, "the Harvest Man is always watching." With that, he slammed the door shut, and I sped away from the eerie house, eager to put as much distance between us as possible. My heart raced as I navigated the treacherous road, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Was the stranger simply trying to scare me with his tale of the Harvest Man? Or was there some kernel of truth to the legend? As I continued down the dark, winding road, the storm seemed to intensify, the rain falling in heavy sheets. I strained to see through the deluge, my wipers working furiously to clear my vision. Suddenly I spotted something in the road ahead, barely illuminated by my headlights. A figure stood in the center of the road, its back to me. It was tall, with a shock of gray hair, and wore a tattered raincoat. My breath caught in my throat as I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop mere feet from the figure. It turned slowly, and I felt my blood run cold as I recognized the gaunt, pale face of the stranger I'd given a ride to earlier. His eyes seemed to bore into my very soul, a malevolent grin spreading across his face. "You can't escape the Harvest Man," he whispered, his voice carried on the wind. My heart pounded in my chest, adrenaline surging through my veins. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, I floored the accelerator, aiming the car directly at the specter. The stranger's grin never wavered, even as I barreled towards him. At the last possible moment, I swerved, narrowly missing him. My car careened off the road, crashing through a stand of trees before coming to a jarring halt. Dazed, I fumbled with my seatbelt, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. As I stumbled out of the wreckage, the rain soaked through my clothes, and I looked around, disoriented. The stranger was nowhere to be seen. My legs trembled with fear and exertion, and I knew I couldn't stay there, alone in the dark. Summoning all my courage, I set off down the road, praying for a passing car or a sign of civilization. The wind howled around me, and the rain continued to fall, each drop a cold, stinging reminder of the nightmare I'd just escaped. As I walked, my surroundings seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, as if the storm itself was conspiring against me. The specter of the Harvest Man loomed in the shadows, a constant, chilling presence that I couldn't shake. I knew that I had to find help, but where could I go? And who could save me from such a malevolent force? As I rounded a bend in the road, I spotted a flickering light in the distance. Squinting through the rain, I saw a small, weathered house, its windows aglow with warm, inviting light. I quickened my pace, hope blossoming in my chest as I approached the house. When I reached the door, I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering above the knocker. The storm raged around me, and I knew that I had no other choice but to seek refuge here. I rapped on the door, and it opened to reveal an elderly woman, her kind, wrinkled face illuminated by the light of a flickering candle. "Please," I stammered, shivering from the cold and fear. "I need help." The woman studied me for a moment before nodding and stepping aside to let me in. The warmth of the house enveloped me, and I felt my trembling subside, if only slightly. She led me into the living room, gesturing for me to sit by the crackling fireplace. "I'm Martha," she said, her voice soft and comforting. "What brings you out in this dreadful storm?" I recounted my tale, from picking up the stranger to my encounter with the Harvest Man. As I spoke, I watched her face, searching for any hint of disbelief or fear. To my surprise, she listened with a quiet, solemn attentiveness. When I finished, she sighed and looked into the fire. "The Harvest Man has been a dark presence in these parts for generations," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Many have tried to escape his grasp, but few have succeeded." My heart sank, and I felt the weight of despair settle over me like a shroud. I had escaped the Harvest Man's clutches for now, but what hope did I have of evading him forever? As I looked into the flickering flames, a terrible realization dawned on me. The Harvest Man had marked me, and there would be no escape. Martha seemed to sense my despair, her eyes filled with a mix of pity and resignation. "There is no way to defeat the Harvest Man," she said quietly. "He is a force beyond our understanding, a darkness that cannot be vanquished." As the storm raged outside, I sat by the fire, my mind a whirlwind of fear and despair. The Harvest Man had become my inescapable shadow, a malevolent specter that would haunt me for the rest of my days. I knew that I would never be truly free of him, that he would always be lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment when I was at my most vulnerable. And so, I returned home, the specter of the Harvest Man never far from my thoughts. My once safe and comforting haven had been transformed into a prison of fear, the darkness outside my windows a constant reminder of the inescapable horror that awaited me. Each night as I lay in bed, I would listen to the wind howling through the trees, and I would imagine the Harvest Man out there, watching, waiting. And though I tried to cling to some semblance of a normal life, the knowledge that I could never truly escape him cast a pall over everything I did, turning each day into a nightmare from which I could never wake.